even though so many people say email marketing is dead, I really don't agree. And for me, the success of my business has come so much through having my email list. Whenever we launch stuff, it's the email list that generates the most amount of sales, hands down. It's been massive for me.
Hey, it's Renee. Welcome to the Into the Wild Show, the podcast for women who want to build incredible mental strength to level up their business and lifestyle. I'm Renee Warren, the founder of We Wild Women, author, speaker, award-winning entrepreneur, and your host. Together, we will make you unapologetic about shining your light, growing your business, and turning you into a wildly confident and successful leader. This is for you, the visionary, the go-getter, the entrepreneur, and for those that need a real kick in the butt to get going and to dream bigger. Each week, I bring in leading experts and entrepreneurs to help you take leaps in the right direction, because I know the best advice comes from someone who has successfully done it before. So, are you ready to level up? Welcome to Into the Wild. Hey, you wild women. My next guest is the founder of the Female Entrepreneur Association, author of a best-selling book, She Means Business, and has built one of the largest memberships for women building online businesses. She's also a wife and mom of 2 kids, and her online business has enabled her to impact women all over the world, earning multiple 7 figures a year, and traveled all over the world with her family, living the life of her dreams. In today's episode, Carrie and I discuss the challenge she faced in scaling her business, how she still faces imposter syndrome today, and how she grew her community and her email list to the thousands and more. And she's still growing it today. Please welcome the incredible Carrie Green.
Hello, it's so good to be here.
Yeah, it's so great to see you again. I feel like the first time I met you was on a boat in San Diego.
Yeah.
That was a good boat.
Feels like ages ago now.
That was. I think it was 2019. Yeah.
Was it? Maybe it was. Yeah, maybe you're right.
Or 2018. I'm pretty sure it was 2019. I could be wrong though. Then COVID happened and it's like this whole chunk of our life was just like poof.
I know. It's so bizarre.
It's very bizarre. It's so great to finally chat. I've been admiring you from a distance for so long with what you've built and becoming a mother and all this stuff. It's so fun watching you.
It's been such a wild journey, especially like the kid part. Like that really has been interesting.
Yeah. Is it 1 kid or do you have 2? 2, right. Did you just have a baby?
No, Marley's 2 now. So I've got a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old.
I feel like it was like just yesterday.
I know. Yeah.
4 and 2 is probably the most challenging ages.
Yeah, literally like just before this, I was at parents' evening and then I was like getting home and trying to like sort them out and then they didn't want me to leave. And it's crazy because like so often they say, like literally Casey, my son said to me tonight, Mummy, I don't want you to have an office anymore. I don't want you to have that. I don't want you to work from there. He once said to me, I don't want to go to Disneyland. And I was like, why? He was like, because I just don't want you to have to work. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, he obviously associates, and it must be because I must have said, Mummy has to work because then we can do really nice things. And I was like, gosh, it's like a parent. How do you navigate that? And it's just so blooming confusing and overwhelming.
Totally. Even Dan says that. It's like people work hard to give their family a lifestyle, but their family never asked for it.
Yeah, so true.
Well, we brought our kids to Disney in Florida a year ago. And we went like full on, like my kids, they were 8 and 9 at the time, 40,000 steps walking every day. And it was like day 4, we're wrapping things up and we're like, legs hurt, we're exhausted, dehydrated. And we're like, hey boys, tell us, what was the best part of your trip? They both unanimously said the hotel pool. And I was like, nope. And meanwhile, I'm holding $1,000 worth of lightsabers and like sparkly wands. And I'm like, I'm done. I'm done with Disney. We're going to go to a motel up the street with a pool next time.
It's always the way.
Yeah. So note to self, don't go to Disney until they can actually remember it. Okay. Quick questions. Love to know. Where are you from?
England.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you got that right. Oh, I love it. What was the toughest moment you had to face as an entrepreneur?
Oh my gosh, just so many. I feel like the one that, well, oh my God, just so many. I'm just going to say, I think I'm going to say just There's three that come to mind. One was actually getting started because I actually sat on my idea for 3 years. The second was running out of money nearly 2 years into building FEA because I just was so in my own way and wasn't had so many blocks and fears around selling anything. And then the third has been the past few years. It's just been a really tough time with building a team and having kids and trying to find my way with it all. I felt like after having kids, for whatever reason, whether it was that, I don't know, but I almost just felt like I lost myself and I lost my voice and I felt really unengaged and disconnected from business. And that's just been so hard to navigate because I was always really clear and focused. And then all of a sudden I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know. I had no drive. It was bizarre. I feel like I'm only just getting out the other side of that. So yeah, those are my top three.
I feel like it's the baby thing. Even with my kids, now they're 9 and 10. Now I feel like there's this sense of more liberty and less worry too, because they can actually tell me with real words what's going on if they're in pain or sad. Prior to that, it's you have to guess.
Yeah. And it's a lot of things to process. And yeah, it's just been interesting. And I think you just lose yourself in it though a little bit because I became a different person, but then the business wasn't different, but I was, and I just didn't know how to deal with it. It has been just really confusing.
That is so interesting. I never ever thought about it that way, that you've become a different person and other things in your life stayed consistent, but you changed so much. Wow. That's fascinating.
Yeah. So,
Okay. What is one of your favorite quotes?
I feel like the quote that I live by is from a book called Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. And he said, everything in life can be taken away from you except for your freedom to choose how you respond. And for me, I feel like it's the most empowering quote I've ever heard. And I live my life by it because I just feel like you can't control the circumstances around you, but you do get to choose how you show up and how you respond. And that is empowering.
100%. All right. So you've grown an incredible organization and you just alluded to how long it took you to finally start it. But what inspired you to start your company?
I'll try the short version. So I started my first business when I was 19. I was at university. I just finished my first year of studying law and I completely ran out of money. I started this business as a reseller selling phone and lock codes online, which was so weird. And so I learned all about building a business and it became really successful. But then when I graduated, I decided to carry on building the business instead of continuing down the law route. And I felt so isolated and lonely. And I would go along to business events and it would just be room full of men in suits. And there were a couple of times where it just made me feel so crap about myself. And then I've always been really into personal development and I've always liked having conversations and helping and inspiring people. And I just really felt like there was something missing and that there was a lot of business support and help and inspiration for men, but there wasn't really anything for women. All of the business development, businessy personal development stuff was just so male oriented. It just did not resonate with me. And, so I just thought I wanted to create something and I literally wanted to find some women who I could sit with, drink some wine and talk about my business problems. And it didn't exist. So I was I just wanted to create it. So that's where the whole idea came from.
Wow. Okay. So then how did you start making money from that?
Well, so I came up with the idea in 2008. And came up with a name, which originally it was called iWoman Success, which was inspiration, ideas. Bought the domain name, set the website up, and then I just didn't do anything. I was kind of afraid. I was afraid of what people would think. I was people who I felt who am I to do this? And then I parked the whole idea. And then probably a year later, I decided I was going to do it again, only this time it was called Rich Chicks. Thank God I didn't go with that.
Wow.
And so literally bought the domain, set it up. I think I also had recipes for success and I kept starting websites and then just stopping it. And then I really kind of felt that whole period I felt so lost. I felt like I was going in circles and it was when you've got that feeling of that calling, it's that feeling of more's bubbling up inside of you and you meant to do it. You've got this idea, but it's bubbling up and you just keep resisting and pushing it down. And I ended up with such bad heart palpitations, and it was just crazy. And then in 2011, I was rereading the E-Myth by Michael Gerber, and he has this chapter on like primary aims, and he has this exercise about it's your funeral, and what would people be saying about the life you've lived, the kind of person you were. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I just felt like I just really needed to do it. And the quote, Tony Robbins, I think it was Tony Robbins, he said, 10 years from now, you'll surely arrive. The question is where? And I was like, I don't even know. And so it just made me think like, and now is the time to do it. And so, yeah, I decided on the Female Entrepreneur Association because I thought it sounded more serious and that I would be taken more seriously. And I also had my primary keywords in my domain name.
Winning.
And then, I just set the website up, and then I just went for it that time.
Do you still own Rich Chicks?
I don't know. I mean, I don't think so.
You could totally sell that. 2-word domains go for thousands these days. Someone will buy it.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy how we just like go through these moments, and it's not like these 2 quotes were the things that completely made you go forward with these ideas. It's like all these lived experiences too. And personal development is a lifelong journey. It's not a weekend course. So there's always like these little influences that's like, oh, that was the thing that helped me do that. But really it's like there's so much more in doing that. So now you have this big business. And how many women do you serve right now?
Oh my gosh, there's so many. There's thousands of women. There's thousands of women in the membership. It's been incredible. At the most, it was 5,000. And then the past few years with kids and building the team, we actually haven't done a launch for the membership a proper launch like we normally do since 2021.
Oh, wow.
I know. I was doing a mastermind recently and I went in the hot seat and I was saying about like my plans and ideas and like trying to, like I'm ready to grow things again. And I was saying how the membership had dropped down. And then I was like, yeah, we haven't actually launched since 2021. And then everyone was like, well, that's why.
Yeah, well, that's why. So do that. So then you're going to be doing that again, right? This year?
Yes, definitely. I feel the momentum again.
I see that. You have some really great content online too. What's your personal Instagram handle?
I am Carrie Green.
Right. Okay. So you have some really good stuff. And then there's the Female Entrepreneur Association as well. Those two. You're, for me, one of the inspirations in this space. Actually, the first inspiration. Like we've since seen others come up, but what I love about what you've created is like, it's almost like we can feel that journey in the content that you've created. And it is so relatable. It's like, I've been there. I don't know how many companies I've started and I still own the domains. I actually sold one last year, which was awesome, for $3,000.
Wow, I love that.
$3,000. I'm like, it's probably about how much I paid in the renewal fees over the course of the last 10 years anyway. But I love this. Now you've grown this community. How did you grow it? What was the trick?
Well, I feel like kind of just what you said. I think in being really honest and open about like what I was experiencing and just sharing. I feel like, I am an open book. Like I could sit down and meet somebody in a coffee shop that I don't know and just blurt out like all my problems and just talk to that person. And I think that I've kind of done that with building the business. I've always really shared the ups and the downs. And I think it's just built connection. And a mentor of mine years ago said to me, like, who do you want to be to your audience? And I was like, who do I want to be? What do you mean? And he was like, well, I think of myself as the uncle. And I was like, okay. And then I always thought, I feel like I'm the best friend. I'm just like there, right there by their side. And yeah, the best friend. And it's really funny how many people say, like, we'll listen to the podcast or read my book, and then I'll end up meeting them and they'll be like, I feel like you're my best friend. So I think that just leading with that and just really trying to be a friend to people, to the community, to this space and the people in it, and just be real and honest and relatable. I think that's helped it to grow into what it is today.
One of the things, if not the thing, that stops a lot of women from really leaning into promoting themselves and to standing on stages and to having the spotlight shine on them is imposter syndrome. And Carrie alludes to this in this conversation. I share examples too. And it's funny, even having a big email list of like 18,000 people, and she still didn't sell. And now look at her today. And you gotta wonder, why aren't we doing this? Why aren't we leaning into our expertise and knowing all these crazy, incredible things that we have accomplished? We've proven our value, we're credible, we're authoritative, yet we still don't sell. And one of those things is PR. And if you don't know, I am a former PR agency owner, now back in the saddle doing PR for women-led businesses. And I see this time and time again when it comes to growing social media accounts, when it comes to pitching the media, is women are intimidated, they're shy, they're worried that the media is actually going to say yes. Now, with working with me, they do say yes. But let me tell you this, when you come to work with me at my Sidelines to Headlines program, I teach you to be media ready. We get you all set up with blurbs and questions you're going to be so confident in answering that even Oprah will come calling. So go check out my Sidelines to Headlines program at wewildwomen.com, Sidelines to Headlines, to see exactly how my program works. What I love about what it is that I do, especially now, is working with incredible women like you and teaching them not only how to show up online, whether this is for reels or for podcast interviews or for TV or radio, you name it, it's all the same energy that's required. I teach you how to be more confident so that your message is clear, you have that clarity, and people really resonate with the work that you do. So go check it out, wewildwomen.com/sidelines to headlines. Was there anything that you were hesitant around in terms of content, stuff that you knew you needed to share that might help, but you're like...
There have been so many times when I've filmed a podcast and it's been like really honest and vulnerable, and then thought afterwards like, oh, I don't know if I can share that. And then like hitting send on the email for it to go out, then I get really nervous thinking, oh my gosh, I shouldn't have done that. It was just too much. It was too much. But then those are always the episodes where I get the most feedback. And then I'm always glad I did it because I realized that it helps people so much. Like I just shared in my weekly email this past week, I talked about like this huge confidence knock that I realized that I've gone through. And I was sharing like all about it. And again, the feedback that I get, and I don't know, it's just this thing we all want to hear it, because when we're building our businesses or you're taking an idea and you're trying to turn it into a reality, half the time you feel like a crazy person and there is so much imposter syndrome. You have so many doubts and worries and fears, and you feel like it's just happening to you. You feel like it's so easy to look out there and look around and think that everyone's got it figured out and that you are an idiot and you don't know what you're doing. And I know I feel like that so often. And I find it comforting when other people have the guts to open up and actually say, I've felt like this or this or this or this happened. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I just feel like I fall a little bit, more in love with that person that says that. And because it makes me feel so much better. And yeah, I think because I share that stuff as it comes up for me, it's just helped build like a really strong connection and relationship with my audience.
Yeah, these things that I have shame about, like the last 5 years of my life, starting a handful of different businesses to try to find the thing that I love again. But there was so much shame in it. Like, I should have this figured out. I was already a successful agency owner. Why don't I have this figured out? And I hit it. And the moment I was like, I think somebody needs to hear that. And I started talking about it was when people started re-engaging with me and started opening more emails and started following me more on social. And they're like, Renee, we love your content. We love how real you are. So I think it's like, especially for women in business, is we need to feel like we're all in this together. It doesn't matter if you're on like chapter 30 or chapter 1, because that woman in chapter 30 been through all of it before.
Yeah. I also feel like it's so cyclical, because even though you might be at the stage 30, you still have that imposter syndrome. And like my recent thing, which I was sharing about in my email, is that like part of it was feeling like an idiot that I have managed to build a really successful business. I've managed to make millions, which is incredible on the one hand. But on the other hand, feeling like I don't know what I'm doing, feeling like seeing other people who are at that level and seeing them like up-level their lives, and they've got, they're doing smart things or they're investing and all this stuff. And the ironic thing is, I've actually invested a lot of money. But yet I feel like it's embarrassing to admit because I don't feel like I'm an investor. Like I would never be able to put that out there because I feel like a fraud saying it. And I think there's like I don't know, I just really started questioning myself at this level and thinking, I just literally feeling like an idiot. And it's crazy what we go through at all different stages and how much we can struggle.
Yeah. And our doubts as we grow just have a bigger price tag.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's magical that it's the thing that your community wants to hear and see. Like I think about like even some of my most popular podcast episodes with guests were these people that didn't, like no one really knew about them. They didn't have a big following, but wow, they can get real and raw. And that's what people want to hear and see. That's where, especially in this type of business, is they want to be inspired by the fact that how could she possibly feel that way? Like how could Carrie Green doubt herself? She knows what she's doing because look what she's created. But to know that means like, ooh, okay, is she still doubting herself? I mean, there's part of it that's like great for me to feel this way about you because it's like, okay, that's great. Because I doubt myself every day. When I ran my agency, I showed up every morning and as a joke, I would say to the team when we're doing like our all hands meeting, I was like, good morning, guys. I don't know what I'm doing today. Haha, as a joke. And they'd all laugh. And like, I have no clue what I'm doing. I do not know. I don't know anything about sales processes or all this stuff, but it seems to be working. Yeah. But tomorrow it could break.
Yeah.
Today's work.
But that's the reality though, isn't it? Because you get to that point when you have a team and then the pressure's on you. And it's been like, I think that's probably one of the biggest things over the past few years of knowing that there's a team relying on me to have this figured out. And I do not have this figured out. And I don't know where it's all going to go and if I make the right decision. And that kind of can trap you in like a loop. And I feel like for me, I ended up getting stuck with really questioning myself on it all. I think that's why I always feel like the biggest thing in business or following any dream is to be able to work on yourself so that you can really get out of your own way. And the other piece that I always feel like is important with this conversation is that you can be a complete mess. You can really not have it figured out. You can feel the most amount of imposter syndrome and you can still be wildly successful. And I think it's so important to recognize that you really don't have to have it together in order to get to where you want to go. No one does. Like, I think probably you and I don't know, I mean, I can't speak for you. I can only speak for myself, but I know for sure that most of the time I feel like I haven't got it figured out. But I just keep taking tiny little steps. And now having created success and looking back, I see that success is really just a case of just taking those tiny little steps and keeping on going, even though you don't really know what you're doing.
Totally. But here's what I think about all this is imagine we did have this feeling of 100% confidence. The problem with that is I think we'd become so lazy. And just think like, oh, if it's just working and I'm so confident, it's so perfect, everything I do is great, we get lazy. So part of these feelings of imposter syndrome or worry is so important for us because it keeps us kind of on alert and improving and tweaking and realizing, oh, now I'm like $1 million CEO. So now I need to level up. So I got to go to a Tony Robbins event or I got to start listening to Carrie Green's podcast. We know we need to do these things so that we can become the $2 million CEO and then the $10 million CEO. But the people that I respect the most are also the ones that are like, they also don't know what they're doing. And like, they can say, well, I have kind of a plan, but hey, something can happen. And then the plan is now obsolete. It's the person that's able to redirect and to just dust themselves off and be like, keep on going. Like, I knew that was going to happen, but hey, here we are today.
Yeah. And the reality is that all of us are trying to get to the next level. So when we might have one thing figured out and like, okay, I know how to do that. Like, for example, if I took any person and we're like, right, we're going to get 1,000 email subscribers in the next month, I know how to make that happen. I've got that figured out. But there's so many things now that I don't have figured out because I'm trying to do things I've never done before. And I feel like most of the time, most of us are trying to do things that we've never done before. So we're all living in this state of like, yeah, like you said, if we didn't, we'd be complacent and yeah, we would not be growing.
Yeah, and how easily I get overwhelmed because the imposter syndrome is really this like bridge between what you don't know and what you don't know. And so like when you're in this space of like supreme imposter syndrome, you think, I got to keep learning. I got to read this next book or got to do this next program. So you're always ingesting all this information, but never actually taking time to execute. And that's when the guilt shows up. That's when you're like, oh, I spent $10,000 on courses last year and I did nothing with them. But I feel like I've made progress because I've educated myself.
Yeah.
That's what I do.
I feel like all of us do that.
Right? Yeah. I mean, I could just probably share all my logins to the best courses for people to take a look at. But you said something that I kind of wanted to hit on because all this aside, you've constantly gotten over this imposter syndrome to the next level, but you still manage to grow your business and create incredible content and grow your community. But I love to know, because coming now into growing an email list is like, there's a lot of pressure on growing TikTok and growing YouTube and social media, which is fine. I think it's important. But with the amount of people I know getting their accounts shut down or paused or something, you don't own that. And so what I know, especially for this year and all years, but especially this year going forward, is how important is an email list and how do we grow one?
Yeah, it's so true though, because I posted out on social media yesterday and we posted 2 reels. Bearing in mind the one the day before, or like a few days before, had 40,000 views on it. It reached like, even now at this point, I just checked it before and it had like 55 views. And I was like, what's happened? So like, I don't know what's happened. And on both of the reels, I was as if I had no views. And I was thinking, this is crazy. And it makes you realize that social media is so risky because you just don't know when something random like that's going to happen and you're going to lose your ability to reach the people who are in your following. Whereas I feel like with email, you own your email list. So it's like a real asset that you're building that is yours. It's really valuable. And I think as well, it's another level because social media, people can hit to follow, like, tap a button to follow you. But on email, they've actually given you their name and their email address and given you permission to email them. And I think it's another level of connection. And I think that's really, really powerful. So I feel like even though so many people say email marketing is dead, I really don't agree. And for me, the success of my business has come so much through having my email list. Whenever we launch stuff, it's the email list that generates the most amount of sales, hands down. So it's been massive for me.
Yeah, it's true. It's like, it's the engagement before the marriage. So like social media is like the dating, because you can easily just unfollow somebody and then all of a sudden now they're no longer in your life. But with emails, you have to go in and unsubscribe. There's a little bit more to do there. And then there's the marriage, which is becoming the customer. So much easier said than done. People say, if you want to grow your business, just grow your email list. Then it's like, perfect strategy, grow email list. Then it's like, but how do I do that? What is the thing I need to do to consistently be growing my email list? To get 1,000 emails added to a list for some people over the course of a quarter, a year is a lot. But it seems like you've simplified this process.
Well, so originally when I started first building my email list, I didn't have like a freebie or a lead magnet or anything. It felt way too overwhelming to create. So initially I actually just had some like opt-in boxes on my website. And it was just really saying about joining, I think it was like join the movement or something. But I was basically saying sign up to my newsletter, but made it sound a little bit better than that. And then I just started emailing people like once a week in the email, it was like a tip, a quote, a woman of the week, a bit of a story. And so I did that for a really long time. And then in 2013, I decided to create my first like freebie, and it was called the Mission for March Challenge. And it was just this little workbook. And I was trying to reach a huge goal that March. And I thought if I want to reach a big goal, maybe the community will want to reach a big goal with me. So I just created this little workbook, and it had like a few questions in that they could ask themselves to help them create their own, like set their own big goal and break it down and then go for it. And 6,000 people signed up for it. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, why did I not do this sooner? And so then I realized, okay, putting something out there that's of value is going to get people on the email list quicker. And over the years, I would say the 2 things that have generated the most amount of email subscribers have been 1, my quiz, 2, little freebie like PDFs, like workbooks. And I often create like little freebie challenges. Like I have this one called Miracle Month, and I created it because I just felt like I'd really lost my motivation. So I thought I need to do something to get me back into it. So I created this thing called Miracle Month, and it was just this little workbook, which was so simple. And I just put it out there. And I mean, we've had my God, tens of thousands of people have downloaded that one. And then the other thing is doing live sessions, so workshops, webinars, that kind of thing. That's helped really grow the email list. And I think from my perspective, make it quick and easy for yourself. So creating a quiz can be quite overwhelming to create. There's a lot of, you've got to think of what buckets are people going to land in? You have to think about the questions you're going to ask to help you to figure out what segment they're going to land in. So I feel like that's kind of quite advanced. Obviously, hosting live stuff like live workshops might feel also quite daunting. So I think if you're just getting started, just create something like a little freebie challenge. Think of something maybe you want to do for yourself, or thinking about your audience and what their frustrations and challenges or desires are, and thinking what would be a fun challenge you could create to really get people excited and get them to take action. And then just creating a simple framework, asking people a few simple questions to help them to get to where they want to be, and just creating a little, a PDF. And obviously it needs to be valuable. But even, for example, I was teaching this recently, and I used the example of creating a fearless challenge. And the first question that I put in the workbook was, the second question was, if you were the most fearless version of yourself, how would your life be different? And it's such a simple question, but actually as part of a freebie, it's so impactful when a person has, downloaded that and then has given themselves the space to sit down with a pen and write the answer to that question. That question could literally change, it might not, but it could change their life. It could really help them to tune into themselves in such a powerful way. So it's not about overwhelming people with I have this 365 page ebook. No one is going to go and download that and read it. But a quick and easy little PDF with some super powerful questions in, or even 3 powerful questions turned into some kind of challenge, that's really valuable. People love it and it's compelling. People feel compelled to sign up for things like that. So having a freebie, and then today it is so much easier to create beautiful workbooks. I mean, Canva is full of amazing templates that you can use. And then creating a really simple, but I say beautiful opt-in page. When I look back at some of the stuff I used to create, I'm oh my God, that's hideous. So I honestly just feel we've got to get going with where we're at, with what we can do. And we know that we are just going to get better and better and better as we go. But yeah, just getting set up. And then once it's set up, honestly, obviously just sharing it on you if you do have social media. But I started running Facebook ads back in 2011, which seems like a long time ago now.
You were probably the only person advertising.
Yeah. I've always been a huge fan of ads. When I ran my first business, I got it off the ground using Google AdWords. I didn't use any other source of traffic generation other than Google AdWords. So I knew the power of paid advertising. And so I started Facebook ads in 2011. I had nothing to sell. I didn't even have a freebie. I didn't even have anything back then. But I started using ads as a way to create visibility. And it was just $5 a day or something, or maybe not even that. And so when I actually created a freebie, I put a small budget together and used that to get it out there, and people signed up for it. And so I have always felt the phrase that's coming to my mind is pay to play. But I was at a mastermind recently, and there was a guy there who has just done an enormous launch, and he was sharing some of his thoughts on, creating successful launches. And he was don't be afraid to spend more. And I just think ads are so powerful because they enable you to get in front of your audience. And when I started using Facebook ads, like I said, I had nothing to sell, nothing, but I was just playing around and seeing what, obviously not spending stupid amounts of money, but it's really powerful. So, I mean, you can get 1,000 email subscribers in a blooming day or a week. It's just, what's your budget? What can you afford to spend?
So you were building the community before you even had anything to sell.
Oh my God, way before. When I launched my membership, I had 18,000 people on my email list.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
One,
amazing.
because I had really big money blocks and I was too afraid to create anything to sell. But yeah, I was really just focused on building this audience. And over that time, that was about a 2-year period of starting FEA and then actually coming up with anything to sell. And I remember people saying to me, like, what are you doing? You don't know what you're doing. Like, this is not financially viable. But for me, I felt like I was building momentum because I was building this audience and I was getting this feedback and people were loving it. And I was like, no, like, I know this is working. I know this is the right thing. And I know that I will figure it out. It took me to completely run out of money to really kind of open my eyes to the blocks that I had and then think, oh my gosh, like, I need to get out of my own way. And it's so crazy because like, I just, like, let me tell this story really quickly. It's so crazy, right? So it was just before Christmas of 2012. I had, funnily enough, that September, I think it was, won this massive award. And this used to be a really good part of my story. And now it's not so great. But Prince Andrew, of all people, gave me the award. And I used to be like, Prince Andrew gave me this award. And now I'm like, no, let's not mention him. So I was like, gosh, this is amazing that I've won this award, but I felt like a fraud because I wasn't making any money. And then like a few months later, I completely ran out of money, didn't have enough money to buy like Christmas presents for my family. Then I met up with a friend of mine and he said, Carrie, you need to create a financial guided visualization for yourself. And he's like, the most powerful voice you can ever listen to is your own. So he taught me how to create like a guided visualization. I went home that night, I created this financial abundance guided visualization and I started listening to it. And I decided that I was going to get out of my own way. A couple of days later, I was in my emails and Lewis Howes had sent out like his weekly email or whatever. I never used to open it. And I just thought, oh, I'll open this email. So I opened the email and then I ended up clicking through, which was even more unusual. And then I went over to his blog. And then for some strange reason, I decided to scroll all the way to the comments, which I never did this stuff. And so in the comments, he'd reply to somebody and he'd left his Gmail email address. And I was like, what? Like Lewis Howes has just left his Gmail email address. So I copied it, sent him an email saying, I love what you're doing. If there's any way I can support you, like I would love to. And then he actually emailed me back. I literally couldn't believe it. And on the 20th of December, I was doing a joint venture webinar with Amy Porterfield selling her FB Influence program. And I think that webinar, I ended up personally making just over $2,000. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this is insane. Like, a week ago, I had run out of money and didn't know what to do. I started doing this work and then now I'm doing this webinar with, oh my God, I was so terrified. I literally had to down a glass of wine before doing it. But then that year after that, I started doing joint venture webinars with like James Wedmore, Lewis Howes, Malin Duncan, all these people. But it enabled me to recognize that like selling is just being of service and my audience loved it. And that gave me the courage. But yeah, it's just such a journey, isn't it?
Oh, that's so crazy. Because now I think like you are, when I look at levels like Lewis Howes, Andrew, he just got the cover of Success magazine, Amy Porterfield, you're there. You're there, but they were there before you and you admired them and now you're there. But the joint venture thing is so important because I always say, borrow somebody else's audience. And when I was growing my agency's email list, part of what we did back then when it was cool to be the ones that were creating the infographics and contributing content, we were partnering with like Neil Patel, HubSpot, SEMrush, like all of these top content companies online. And what we do, our approach was, hey, we will write this thing, we will design this thing. All we ask is that you help promote it. And then we'll share the leads 50-50. And they're like, yeah, absolutely. Because we would actually run money to advertise these downloads. And they were like white books or e-papers or whatever it was. And our list kept growing and growing. And on top of that, it was like, wow, so Neil Patel is actually advocating for you. Well, I want to work with you. So what came of it was like $30,000 a month PR agency clients because we're doing that. But it was the borrowing somebody else's audience. And we provided as much value as possible. Like we hired the top designers because it was pre-Canva, the top designers to make these things. We got editors, like it was good content, still is. It's a little bit old, but we did such a good job that anytime we asked, they're like, yeah, let's do it again. Because their email list went up, ours went up. And then it was just, but we couldn't have done it without access to their community.
And I also feel like you don't have to be really successful before doing stuff like that because so many people feel like you have to wait in order to like reach out. And I remember back in the early days of FEA when it was nothing and I hadn't got anything going, I remember starting a digital magazine. Just as you do. And I remember reaching out to putting this wish list together of people that I wanted to like interview and like work with. Like Kim Kiyosaki, the author of Rich Woman, was on the list, and she was the first person I reached out to. And I read her book and had loved it. And I remember emailing her from her website and then her getting back to me saying, yeah, I'd love to. And I was like, my God, that was easy. And it was just like, I was so blown away by like how easy it was sometimes to connect with people and to collaborate with people. And yeah.
To think they're going to say no. Like even like, I know you're busy. And I was like, I want to have Carrie on my show. And we met when we have a connection through Dan because you guys have worked together. But outside of that, I was like, I was a little bit nervous to reach out. I know you wouldn't say no, but I just felt like, oh, it'll just eventually happen. And then you're like, yep, sure, send it over. Like, wow, this really happened. And I did this with like you, Angie Lee, Rachel Luna, like all these people that I just love their message. Everyone's saying yes. And you know why? It's because I'm just asking, right? That's it. I'm just asking. And these people know me. But still, besides that, it's like, if you don't have the courage to just ask, it's always going to be a no, right?
Yeah.
It's always going to be a no.
Yeah, so true.
I love this. Okay, so this is really good because we talked about like imposter syndrome and growing an email list. And I think that's that's the angle. And it's so good. It came together to match so beautiful because I see all of my imposter syndrome coming up and not growing my own email list. But I have one last question for you. When I ask you what it means to be a wild woman, what is that for you?
Oh, wow. I feel like the thing that's coming to my mind is like just courageously going after my dreams and the life that I really want to live, and just constantly being intentional about like tuning in with what that means for me and what that feels like and what that looks like, and making life the wildest, most exciting, most adventurous experience ever. Like, yeah, living fully, like really living fully. That really excites me because I think the thing that always tips me over the edge is the fact that we have one life, and it's so many people live it like it's a dress rehearsal. And I don't want to get to the end of it thinking, oh my gosh, I just wish I'd have just had the courage to go after things a little bit more. And so I think we should all be a little bit more wild, especially in the pursuit of our dreams and the life that we truly want. So
100%. Yeah, I love it. Okay, so people want to go online to find you. Where can they go?
I am Carrie Green on Instagram or the FemaleEntrepreneurAssociation.com. Yeah, probably those places.
Perfect. And I'll put those in the show notes. Well, amazing. Carrie, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. It's been so fun. I loved it.
So there you have it. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Into the Wild. To make this girl happy and to help reach other women who are dreaming of starting their business, please leave us a 5-star review on iTunes and everywhere you listen in. Also, if you want to find me in the wild, check me out on Instagram at Renee_Warren. That's RENEE_WARREN. And leaving you with one of my favorite tips of all time: the best advice you could ever receive is from someone who has successfully done it before you. Until next time, ladies, peace out.